Each of us exists in a world of terrible user interfaces and poorly designed systems. Whether we're at home, dealing with confusing appliances, at work using bad software, or in the community struggling to understand instructions, bad UIs pollute every aspect of our lives. As each new, poorly designed user interface system enters our lives, it adds to our burden of terrible UIs. It's a quiet rot that costs us time and money and makes life more difficult. We grow accustomed to these systems, so we don't notice how big a burden they exert on our lives. It's a silent burden we all carry. Maybe we notice how awful UIs are when we travel and we're plunked into a world to which other people have acclimated. Or maybe it's your first days in a new job where bad systems are explained to you as though you're the problem, not the system. The mountains of bad systems we deal with every day were developed with limited UI design budgets, or with the burden of legacy systems, or by untalented designers. There's no nice way to say it, but in a lot of cases it's clear people just didn't give UI design the care it deserved. But AI is changing this dynamic. AI is lifting the baseline of quality far above the mediocre UIs we see in our daily lives. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Verlicity AI podcast. I'm Cristian Worthington.
And I'm Sandra Giffin. Chris, that opening, it's a heavy thought, but it's one that has become incredibly real, almost personal for us over the last few months.
It has, because we're living it. As our listeners know from our last few episodes, we are deep in the trenches of building our new startup. And this experience, specifically building it with AI tools like Replit, has exposed us to a reality that is it's hitting home in a way it never did before.
It's forced us to re-examine all those little frustrations, all that background radiation you just described, and ask a simple question. Why did we ever put up with it?
And we're realizing we may not have to put up with it for much longer.
Today, we're talking about user interfaces, why most of them are awful, and how AI is about to trigger a revolution in quality that will change how we experience everything. The implications of this revolution extend far beyond software and promise a productivity dividend that's hidden in plain sight.
I want to start with that travel analogy I mentioned in my rather grim introduction. Imagine, I'm in an unfamiliar city, I'm in a rental car, and I pull into a parking lot. I walk up to the kiosk where I have to pay, and it's like an alien artifact. It has a mix of buttons and slots. The instructions are in a confusing pictogram, and I'm standing there trying to decipher the system. People lining up behind me. I'm left feeling like a complete idiot because I can't figure out how to give my money to the machine.
Haha. I've been that person.
We all have. But here's the thing. The locals walk up, punch 3 buttons in a sequence that makes no logical sense, and walk away. They've acclimated. They've internalized the bad design. You, as the outsider, are the only one who can see it for what it is, a terribly designed system. You are experiencing what I'd call a moment of engineered stupidity, when I'm hamstrung by the system's engineering flaws.
And my favorite example is the flip side of that, the process of acclimation to a new job. It's that new job analogy you referred to in the intro. It's your first day, and someone is patiently walking you through the company's expense reporting system, or the customer relationship management software.
Oh, enterprise software. The worst.
The absolute worst. And the person training you says something like, okay, so after you enter the client ID here, you have to hit save, but don't hit submit. Then you open this other menu, find the client again, and then you hit submit. If you do it out of order, it wipes the whole record.
That is so specific and so real.
And it's always explained to you as if you're the one who's a little slow, not the system. This is a form of institutional learned helplessness. The human is expected to adapt to the machine's flaws. It's viewed as a training issue, not what it actually is, a catastrophic design failure. You are forced to internalize the system's clunkiness just to be part of the team.
And this isn't just at work. It's everywhere. It's in our homes. I looked at my microwave the other day. We've owned that machine for years, and it has buttons I have never used and have no idea what they do. I use 3 of the buttons. 95% of the interface is not just useless, it is a burden. It's visual and cognitive clutter. I spend most of my effort avoiding the clutter.
Or the modern washing machine, with a dial that has 25 icons that are completely meaningless. What's the difference between perm press and delicates and quick wash? We just guess. We pick one and hope it doesn't shrink our clothes.
But my favorite example, the Hall of Fame for bad UI, has to be the car infotainment system. How is it that in this age you can buy a car, which is the most expensive piece of technology most people own, and the central touchscreen is slow, cluttered, and illogical? When I rent a car, I always have to decide whether I'm even going to bother to figure out how I'm going to pair the Bluetooth on my phone. The menus are always a maze. I design systems for a living, and I find myself in debug mode when I deal with these systems. I treat them as though they are broken, because in real terms they are.
It's because traditional automakers are hardware companies, not software companies, and it is painfully, dangerously obvious that they don't understand.
And we just accept it. We get in the car, sigh, and pair our phones so we can use an interface designed by Apple or Google, companies that actually understand software.
We laugh about it, but this is the acclamation. We've been trained to accept this low-grade, persistent frustration as the cost of having the technology. And this gets to the real psychological burden, the core of that silent burden. The great usability expert Don Norman wrote the book on this. It's called The Design of Everyday Things.
A classic.
It's a classic for a reason. His core premise is that bad design doesn't just frustrate us, it makes us feel stupid. When you can't figure out the microwave, or the parking meter, or the door, his most famous example is the Norman door. A door that you can't tell if you should push or pull. Your first instinct isn't to blame the untalented designer. Your first instinct is to blame yourself. You feel incompetent. That is the silent burden. It's the accumulation of 1,000 micro-frustrations and 1,000 moments of self-blame, and it's a massive, invisible tax on our collective cognitive load.
So that's the what. The why is where this gets really interesting. Why is this mediocrity the norm? Why is bad design the default?
As you said in the opening, it's not always just untalented designers, though that's certainly a factor. The real fundamental answer, the reason the Norman door is still everywhere, is economics. There are 2 major economic forces that have guaranteed a steady supply of bad UIs for decades.
The excuses for mediocrity.
Exactly. The first one is what I call the burden of legacy. So much of the world, especially the corporate world, runs on ancient software. That clunky, awful interface your bank teller or your HR manager is forced to use is often just a thin, modern-looking veneer slapped on top of a database and a system architecture designed in the 1980s.
A good example is the automatic teller machine at your bank.
Yes. And the reason they don't fix it, the reason they don't just replace it, is that it's prohibitively expensive and incredibly risky. That legacy code is holding the entire company together. Modernizing it is like trying to change the engine of a 747 while it's in flight. So they don't. They just add another layer of clunky UI, and the support burden and labor costs just keep rising.
I can relate. We have some of those systems in our companies. And the second reason?
The second reason applies to new products. It's what I call the version 1.0 problem. Getting any new complex piece of technology to market, a new app, a new car, a new microwave, is a brutal, expensive, all-consuming effort.
This is my life. You're giving me flashbacks. In our old businesses, the 6 companies we built before this new AI venture, we would always go to market with a minimal viable product that had an awful UI, always.
We had no choice.
Yes, we had no choice. We were burning cash, we had a deadline, and the guiding principle was just make it work. The UI was the last thing we thought about. In my experience, we never came close to a user experience that made me moderately happy until we released version 3.0. And that often took years.
And by that time, a lot of the features that were in 1.0 were removed because we learned that actually using a system is a world away from designing a system.
A world away. Exactly. And that brings us to the old, broken process that used to be the way organizations prototyped their workflows and UIs. Wireframing.
Ah, yes. If you haven't gone through the process of wireframing, it's very unsatisfying. It usually just reinforces your bad decisions by making them look official.
A wireframe is basically a blueprint for a website or a workflow or an application that system architects use to map out the steps in a process. It's a schematic, a visual guide that shows the structure. It's a two-dimensional, skeletal outline. It's like looking at a blueprint of a house and then trying to imagine how it will make you feel to have breakfast in the kitchen.
Exactly. There's no soul in a diagram. Wireframes are low fidelity. And let's be clear, most organizations don't even bother with this step in their design. That horrible parking meter you struggled with on your last visit to a foreign city probably was never wireframed or prototyped properly.
And this is why we always had that version 1.0 to version 3.0 problem. We'd design in a vacuum, we'd create crude mock-ups, and we'd show them to users.
And the users would just stare at them. As we now know, test users and stakeholders have a terrible time relating to diagrams. They just can't do it. The research on this is clear. People are met with a lot of confusion. They can't use their imagination to understand what the end result will feel like.
So we'd get useless feedback, like, I don't like that shade of gray.
So think about the pipeline this created. The entire process guaranteed a disconnect. We, the designers, created an abstract, static blueprint that we understood. We showed it to users who didn't understand it and couldn't give meaningful feedback on the workflow. The development team, operating on that limited budget, then took that flawed, abstract blueprint and built it, exactly as it was drawn. The version 1.0 was the first time anyone, including us, actually experienced the workflow. And by then it was too late. All the time and money had been spent. The high cost was locked in. The bad design was set in concrete.
But, as we've been saying, vibe coding, and AI generally, has changed everything. This is the reality we're living right now, building our new startup. As we've discussed in our previous episodes, we're using Replit to develop our system, and it's just a different universe from what I just described.
It's not an iterative change. It's a total rupture from the old model.
It really is. We can iterate through designs almost as quickly as we can think up new ways to design the system. And here's the key phrase, the part that changes the entire equation. The AI produces testable environments.
That's the whole ballgame, right there. We're not showing users a wireframe, which is a static, low-fidelity, abstract representation of an idea. We're giving them a high-fidelity, interactive prototype, something they can click, something that feels real.
And this is the most powerful part, the part that still blows my mind. It's connected. We can interact with real data and the actual APIs that our system accesses so the users can experience actual transactions.
This is so important. In the old model, getting a prototype to actually talk to a real-world API, like a credit card processor or a data source, that wasn't a design task. That was a massive engineering task.
It was weeks of a senior developer's time just to build a fake test environment. Now, with Replit, I can tell the AI, hook this button up to the Google Gemini API and run this prompt. And minutes later, I'm testing a real transaction. This is the part that feels like cheating.
It feels like you're breaking the rules of business.
It does. I can try things I would never have tried before. Radical design ideas, completely different user workflows. In the old days, I couldn't risk it. If I spent 3 weeks of a developer's time on a radical idea and it didn't work, I'd just blown $20,000. The cost of failure was way too high.
And that's where you hit on the true economic shift. You said it yourself. You can reach for levels of perfection that would have been unreasonable for a business with a finite budget.
Unreasonable? It would have been irresponsible to even try?
What's really happening here, what we are experiencing, is that AI is collapsing the economic cost of experimentation. In the old model, the sunk cost of labor was massive. The marginal cost, the cost of trying one more time, was measured in thousands of dollars of developer salaries. So we rarely did it. We shipped the good enough version 1.0.
And we crossed our fingers.
But in this new AI-driven model, the marginal cost of a new iteration is near zero. We can ask the AI to build an entire user flow. We can test it for an hour, and if we don't like it, we just throw it away. We hit that rollback feature we talked about in our last episode. That button isn't just a technical feature. It is a fundamental economic principle. It's economic freedom. It completely de-risks experimentation. And that is what allows us to chase perfection. So, we've established why bad UI was the norm for so long. The old economics just made it too expensive and too risky to fix. But I want to go back to that silent burden for a minute, because I want to put a real number on it. This isn't just about our personal frustration with microwaves. This is a massive, measurable drag on the global economy.
Yeah, bad UIs are an invisible tax on everything.
It's a $1 trillion drag built from 1 billion tiny cuts. Let's look at the data. I see 3 main categories of economic damage. First, the most direct and obvious cost: lost revenue and customer churn. The statistics here are just staggering. Studies consistently show that 88% of online users are less likely to return to a website after a single bad experience. Think about that. As a business, you get one shot. Get it wrong, and they're gone forever. Some reports even suggest that the 70% of online businesses fail specifically because of bad usability and a bad user experience.
70%? That's not a small number.
It's catastrophic. The second biggest cost is lost productivity and wasted labor. This is the new job problem we talked about. When a company forces its employees to use clunky, badly designed internal software, it is literally burning money. Every time an employee has to spend 10 minutes fighting a confusing interface instead of 2 minutes doing their job, the company is paying for lost productivity. It creates inefficiency and rising labor costs. It's an endless training loop for a system that should be intuitive from the start.
You're paying people to fight your own tools.
You're paying for their frustration, and that leads to the third cost: support and rework costs. A bad UI is a non-stop cost creation machine. It creates an unsustainable support burden. Every confused user, every how do I, or where is the becomes an avoidable support ticket. And the cost of fixing these problems after the product is live? Studies have shown it can cost 100 times more to fix a usability problem in a live product than it would have cost to fix it in the design phase.
So you either pay a fortune in lost revenue, or pay a fortune in support calls, or pay 100 times the cost to fix it.
It's a perfect trap. And these economic numbers don't even capture the full social cost. The frustration is real, and it has consequences. There's a famous case study from a few years ago, Snapchat. They rolled out a new, universally hated UI redesign. Users were furious. They didn't just complain to their friends. They filed a massive online appeal to get the old design back. And the result? The company's market value dropped by $1.3 billion.
Wow.
That was the stock market literally pricing in the social backlash. Bad design erodes trust. And trust, as we've said before, is the single most valuable and fragile asset a company has. That silent burden isn't so silent when it finds a collective voice.
And this brings us right back to our startup. This is the core of what we're experiencing. AI-based coding tools, like Replit, lift the baseline of quality far above the mediocre UIs we see in our daily lives.
That's the perfect way to say it. The baseline is higher. We're not saying AI will make UIs perfect, but it will lift the floor. It will ensure that the worst UIs are much better than before.
The worst thing that Replit generates for us on its first try, the very first, version 1.0 prototype, is already better than the clunky, awful version 1.0 that we used to spend a year and $1 million building. It's clean, it's functional, it uses modern design patterns, and most importantly, as we keep saying, it's testable.
This is the most important takeaway for every single person listening. The AI is democratizing competence. It is systematically eliminating all the old excuses for bad design.
Let's go through the list.
What was the old excuse? We have a limited user interface design budget. Well, AI makes the cost of generating a high-quality design near zero. Excuse gone. What was the next one? We're held back by the burden of our legacy systems. Well, AI makes it so fast and cheap to prototype a replacement that your "it's too risky to change" argument gets weaker every single day. Excuse gone.
And the last one, we just don't have talented designers.
That's the biggest one. The AI is an infinitely patient, highly skilled partner. It has been trained on millions of examples of good design. It automates the meticulous hand coding and provides a high-quality professional default. That excuse is now gone, too.
It completely changes our job. As we said in other episodes, our role is shifting. We are no longer the builders, the people laying the bricks. We are the directors. We are the architects. We are in the taste business now, the judgment business. The AI can generate 10 different layouts in a minute, but it's our human judgment, our empathy for the end user, that decides which one is right.
Which brings us to that final crucial point. Obviously, UIs are subject to the eye of the beholder, but, and this but is everything, but bad UI design is easy to spot. When you see people struggle, you're watching a bad UI.
You see someone trying to pull a push door.
Exactly. And this is the final piece of the puzzle. That silent burden we've been carrying. It's about to get very loud. Our collective acclamation to bad design was never a choice. It was a product of the old, high-cost economic model. We had to put up with the clunky microwave because the alternative was no microwave. We had to learn the stupid expense report software because it was the only way to get reimbursed.
We had no leverage.
Yes, we had no leverage. But now that AI has collapsed the cost of quality, our expectations are being reset. We are all collectively right now becoming intolerant of bad design. That clunky car infotainment system or that microwave with 31 useless buttons will no longer be a quiet annoyance. It will be an unacceptable failure. The companies, the managers, the designers who try to hide behind the old excuses, they're going to be left behind.
We started this episode talking about this invisible weight, this background radiation of bad design that we all just live with. For me, the most exciting part of this AI revolution isn't just the wild, futuristic things we can build. It's that we can finally fix all the old, broken, frustrating things that have been dragging us down for decades.
This is how AI is going to make our lives tangibly better. Not in some abstract Jetsons sci-fi way, but in 1,000 tiny, mundane moments every single day. It's not a self-driving car. Yet, it's a website that just works. It's a checkout form that doesn't make you want to throw your laptop across the room. It's an appliance you can actually use without a manual.
It's lifting this silent burden from our collective backs.
And as this new, higher baseline of quality becomes the norm, our collective patience for mediocrity is going to drop to zero. And that, I think, is a revolution we can all get behind.
That's it for us today. I'm Cristian Worthington.
And I'm Sandra Giffin. Stay curious and join us next time on Verlicity AI for a podcast that feels just right.